Rock bottle on the track, boy.
Thank you very much for being with us today, folks. I really appreciate you being here. We're going to talk about our Operation Fall Hall 2, our human trafficking operation. Now, at the conclusion of that, we've had an event just occur at the state level, and the Secretary of the Department of Corrections has asked me to make a statement about that. So there'll be a separate topic after this human trafficking operation press release is complete. But I'm joined here today by our team members. To be ultimately successful as we have been in this operation, we simply can't do it by ourselves. It takes the police agencies and our colleagues from social services to be able to do a complete human trafficking operation, because what we're after today and every day that we do one of these operations is to find the victims of human trafficking. To do that, you have to cast a wide net, and that's what we did. We were joined by the Haines City Police Department, and Chief Greg Gorick is here today with us. The Lake Wells Police Department is represented here today. The Davenport Police Department and Interim Chief Bill Schrader is with us. The Bartow Police Department and Captain Michelle Smith is with us. The Winter Haven Police Department is represented by Lieutenant Derek Blanton. Of course, we have the State Attorney's Office with Jennifer Ordonez, and I can't say enough great things about Brian Haas, our State Attorney, and his prosecutors, because none of this would be possible without the cooperation of and the support of the State Attorney's Office. But what's really important to us is not just that we have a police operation, because we had a successful police operation, but we're trying to identify the victims of human trafficking. And when we do, from the moment they come into the operation, we want to immediately hand them off to our social services friends and our counselors so that they can begin working with these victims of human trafficking. These are some of the most difficult victims to work with. We know there are a lot more of them that admitted, but as you can see, that we have fuzzed out the faces of several that have admitted, or either we suspect. And then there's one that we had to tape over this morning that was in the county jail, who just this morning admitted to us, okay, I am a victim of human trafficking. I would like services. So our goal is to start these services the moment that they are taken into custody, and then to treat them as what they are, victims, not suspects of criminal events. I might point out, if others of these prostitutes come forward later as victims, there's specific law in the state of Florida that's really terrific that causes us to go in and eliminate all evidence of an arrest, photographs, reports, court actions, and they're treated as a victim. And it's important to understand that if there were no jobs, if there were no customers, there would be no prostitutes, and there would be no human trafficking. But folks, the overwhelming majority of these ladies are or have been in the past taken advantage of. You know, they used to call them, oh, he's the one who provides for me. He's the one that gives me a ride. But what we've found is many times that in fact this person is trafficking this lady. He's making a profit off of her. He is controlling her very life. As I said, some of these victims are hardcore because they've learned that these traffickers control their very life, what they wear, where they live, their drugs, their food, their entire life. we've got to break all that down. So having services on site to deal with this is very important. So we made 160 arrests in only 7 days. 160 arrests. That was 86 prostitutes, 65 Johns, and then there were 9 others, 2 of which I'm going to talk about briefly, that were caught up. We charged during this operation 52 additional felonies, 216 misdemeanors. But of this group of folks that we see here today, they had already amassed collectively 419, I want to say thousand, but it's 419 previous felonies. You would think I'd learn to read this, okay? There's not zeros at the end of it. 419 previous felonies, 619 previous misdemeanors. So many of these people were already well known to the criminal justice system. Only 16 of the 160 were from Polk County. I think the people of Polk County are about to get the message that if you come here and violate the law, we're going to put you in jail, and Brian Haas and his prosecutors are going to prosecute you. So we're pleased that it was only 16 of 160. Central Florida needs to catch a clue. If you come here to commit crime, you're coming here to go to our jail. But in addition to that, we have 3 of the men that are here for deriving proceeds. We suspect they're human traffickers. We don't have enough evidence to charge them with that at this time. They're still under investigation. But as we start with our folks that we're going to show you today, our cards, I want to start with a blank card. I want to talk about this lady because we must educate the community to understand that many of these ladies that are victims have had a really tough life. And we're trying to break the cycle. This particular lady was the victim. She walked into our undercover operation. She was 10 weeks pregnant. She said she had been taking drugs, and specifically fentanyl, and hoping and praying that naturally she could abort the baby. She didn't want the baby. It was an unwanted pregnancy. That's some of the sadness that we see. She also received a text while she was in our custody from someone that said, quote, "Just promise me you'll be careful. Get out of that place because that is Polk County. Get out fast." Well, it's too late. She was already in custody. But that was a good thing because we have identified her as a victim, and if she'll accept the services of these wonderful ladies that's behind us, we can make a positive difference in her life. She's from Fern Park, Florida, and that's over near Seminole County. It must have been Government Day or Government Week at Fall Hall 2 because Jason was not the only person in law enforcement to get arrested. This is Keith Nieves. He's 24. He's a state corrections officer. He works for Lake Corrections, Lake CI. He's been there 2 years. He came there on a late night. He lives in Orlando, and he wanted to engage in consensual sex with a prostitute who turned out to be an undercover law enforcement officer. Now think about this. This guy is in charge of people who are in prison for violating the law. He comes and he violates the law. So birds of a feather flock together, and he's in the jail as a jailbird, like those jailbirds he watches. Then there's Cameron Burke. Cameron Burke was a computer technician. Formerly, okay, let me underscore formerly, he was at Oak Ridge High School. He's 41 years of age. Oak Ridge High School is in Ocoee or Orange County, Florida. Interestingly enough, listen to me, you can't make this stuff up. he was out on bond from having sex with a student, a mere child. Yes, that's right. He had sex multiple times with this child at school, in his office. He was arrested in March of this year. So he's bonded out. He's got some hugely serious criminal charges pending against him in Orange County. And guess what? How much of a difference did that make? Not a lot. He's on dating websites, and he comes to the undercover op saying, I want to engage in sex with 2 women for $200. Well, when we arrested him, then he becomes an emotional wreck. Oh, I can't do this. I'm out on charges. Well, dude, why didn't you think of that ahead of time? Of course, you only had 3 brain cells. He didn't care until he was caught, and then it was serious. Well, what about that little girl you sexually battered at school in your office where you were a computer tech? So in any event, he's arrested again, and we certainly hope that there is a Parker v. State so that he stays locked up. He's a dangerous person to children, to the community, when he's not locked up. Well, you know, teachers sometimes have to be taught a lesson. There you go. There's your teacher, Carlos Gonzalez. He's 36. He teaches at New Dimensions High School in Osceola County. He teaches math. And he came for 1 hour with 2 ladies, and he was willing to pay $200. But he obviously didn't think through this very well. I don't know how well he does math, how well he teaches math, but, you know, 1 trip to a prostitute house ends up 1 trip to the county jail. 1 and 1 is 2, and he got to 2. He said he was not going to have sex when we talked to him. He just came there to give the undercovers the money. Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? He just, out of the warmth of his heart, wanted to talk trash to 2 prostitutes online and show up to give them money. And then he was going to leave. He did leave. He left in the back of a van and went to the county jail. Oh, he was from Davenport, from Polk County. He should have known better. He knows better now. Guess who this guy is? School teacher. Got us another one. Yep, John Layton. He's 26. He was a teacher at West Orange High School in Orange County. When he showed up, I just love this. You want to go, what are you thinking, man? What are you thinking? Well, you're not thinking. He was wearing the high school track shirt. I didn't stutter. He was wearing the high school track shirt. And he came there and he wanted sex for $40. And he saw our undercover agent and said, wow, 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 I'll take $100 worth of that. Well, what he got was $100 worth of a trip to the county jail. So he's in jail. Maybe he and the math teacher can talk about, how did you get here? Well, 1 and 1 added up to 2. He said, well, you know, I'm a track coach. I sprinted my way to jail. I don't know what they'll talk about, but they had an opportunity. Not only that, are you ready for this? Then he asked the detectives, how long is this going to take? He said, you know, I got track practice in the morning. No, the students have track practice in the morning. You've got jail practice in the morning. You're not going to any practice. Well, that was the end of our government, folks, for the time being. But then we had a male prostitute show up, okay? This guy's name is David Morton, and boy, did he show up. This guy was naked when he walked in the door. He was not buck naked. To be buck naked, you can't even be wearing your socks. But you see, he was wearing a shirt. But that was all. So he boldly walked in to the undercover operation. And that's right, had nothing on from the waist down. But apparently he had him a little towel, so when he was outside, they could see the cheeks of his butt, but he was protecting the other area. But as soon as he hit that front door, boom, away the towel went. So guess what? He went to jail. And he is just a bad guy. He's from Orlando, Florida, too. And then there was John Glass. John Glass is 61 years of age. He's from Verona, Kentucky. But he has a vacation home in Kissimmee. His wife was in Kissimmee at the vacation home when he eased away and showed up at our undercover operation. I don't know if he showed up on time or not, like his pizzas, because he owns Domino's pizza franchises in Kentucky. You order what you want on the pizza. Well, he ordered what he wanted, and then he arrived, they told me, on time. So I guess his training of delivering pizzas or having his staff deliver pizzas on time, he transferred that over to us. But listen, we didn't give him any pizza. We don't serve any pizza at the jail, but certainly he felt like he had gone through a pizza oven by the time he had gotten arrested, got to go to jail. But he was an honest sort of Domino pizza franchise owner. He said, well, I've done this 4 times in the past. Well, have you discussed this with your wife? Did you get her permission? Did she say, go boy, go? Apparently not. So he told her, he says, I'm paying for an hour of sex, but I think 15 minutes is all I'll need. He's just going to give her a tip, I guess, kind of like the pizza delivery guy. What else can you say? This is Guillermo Perez. He's 57. Now, where would we be with an undercover operation and no Disney employees? Oh, yes, we always have Disney employees. He's a bellhop at the Coronado Springs Resort on Disney. He's from Winter Garden. He confessed and he said, you caught me. Well, he wasn't by himself. This guy is a independent photographer. He does not work for Disney, but he's contracted by Disney. He came there not to take photographs, but to engage a lady of the evening. But he's a nice guy. He brought sour Skittles for the undercover. He's from Orlando. He's from Winter Garden. Maybe when they get out of jail, they could Uber back to Orange County together, you think? So here's Shanice Blake. I want to make it abundantly clear she did not come there to have sex, even though she went on this website, but she showed up with, you're not going to believe this, a pound of marijuana to sell. That's right, $1,900 she sold a pound of marijuana. So who drove her there? Her boyfriend, Kervins Felix. He's 29. What did they bring beside a pound of marijuana? Their 2-year-old baby. No car seat, not secured, but a 2-year-old baby. Brought a 2-year-old baby with them. That's not cool. So both of them went to jail. The 2-year-old baby was recovered and is on the way back to the family. Then there's Ariel Palmore. She really likes our undercover operations. She loves visiting with us at our operations. In fact, she loves us so much, she showed up in our March Sadness arrest earlier this year. And then she came back for our fall haul too. We look forward to seeing her again in our next operation because she's kind of gotten used to being arrested by us, if she's out of jail. But when we look back at her felony charges, okay, she says she's in cosmetology. But in 2009, she was charged with murder. It was dropped to robbery with a firearm. She got a year and a month and 6 years probation. Man, that Orange County is a place you ought to be if you want to commit crime. Don't come to Polk County because we're going to lock you up for like ever for being involved. But they pled her down. Well, she did so well with a year and a day and 6 years probation. In 2021, she was charged with murder or homicide again. And that charge was dropped or abandoned in Orange County. She's doing all right. She somehow was allegedly involved in 2 murders, and she's still out coming to our operations where she's been arrested twice. She has a very, very violent history. But we appreciate her coming to our operations and behaving. She's a perfect lady when we arrest her. She's from Orlando. Our next one, where would we be without an alleged gang member? That's right, he says he's a member of a gang. He's from St. Cloud over in Osceola County. He said he was supposed to be the prostitute in this event, and he came over to engage in sexual conduct with a lady, ostensibly, while the husband watched. Surprise! That's not what it was. It was a sting, and you got stung on your gang rear end. When we arrested him, he was armed with a handgun in his waistband. Newsflash, he's a convicted felon. He's not supposed to have firearms, but he had one. He has a history of violent and nonviolent past. Now, folks, our goal is to try to send him to prison for carrying a concealed firearm by a convicted felon. Not only the charges that he has in front of him. So today, we have asked our colleagues who would like to present. Our police chief said, hey, Sheriff, you got it. But we do have the opportunity to hear from Jody Domain. She's from One More Child. And there's representatives that were at the operation from Heartland for Children, Children's Home Society, DCF, Amanda Wilson. She said she's not going to talk. Saleha Freedom was with us, and Dr. Marianne Thomas from My Name, My Voice. So we'll start with Dr. Thomas, and then next Jody Domain will speak.
Hi, my name is Marianne Thomas, and I am with the organization My Name, My Voice. And just first, thank you to the sheriff for inviting me back again to do this operation, along with the fine men and women who conducted it. It is so important that we are able to do this, that in that first instant that a victim is identified, that we are able to immediately stand alongside that victim and sit with them through questioning, help them along their path of talking to police and being able to walk out of that life. Thank you to all of the PDs that also showed up and lended a hand. I worked with some amazing people this time. I have to say these operations are better every time. I'm proud to be a part of it. I saw people who are detectives or officers for different organizations come and ask me about victims from previous operations and how they are doing. I saw people come in this operation and come and say, I see something, I feel something is off here. Can you come check it out? and I was able to immediately go and talk to that person and see if they needed help. And so I'm so proud to be here. And if you're someone who I met on this operation and you were under arrest and you were there to sell yourself, I just want to remind you something you heard me say that night. You don't have to do this. You can do something different. I am standing here saying it can be done. And so please, you are given a packet of paper with different phone numbers. Call one of them. If you don't get the answer you need, call the next one. But please make those calls. And if you're someone who was arrested for purchasing a person, that's not okay. Okay? We don't buy people. That's not okay. And so I'm sorry we had to meet like this, but I'm really glad that we do this because I really hope you have learned a lesson here. Thank you so much.
Okay. Jody?
Thank you, Sheriff Judd. My name is Jody Domingue. I'm the Executive Director of Anti-Trafficking at One More Child. One More Child is a nonprofit organization that served over 320,000 children and families last year by coming alongside foster children, hungry children, struggling families, single moms, and trafficked children and adults. We've worked these human trafficking operations with the Polk County Sheriff's Office and the various agencies represented here today, and every single time we are able to identify several potential victims of human trafficking. But what we also know is that everyone that walks through those doors to be purchased, after we sit down and we hear their stories, they have had histories every single time of being abused and being sexually exploited. So our teams, made up of advocates, peer mentors, and mental health counselors, are able to come alongside of them immediately to offer life-changing services that begin the restoration process immediately. So we're going to ask this. If you have children in your life, because we know now more than ever, children and young adults are susceptible for being trafficked and sexually exploited, please be involved in their lives. Find out who their friend groups are and what their friend groups are doing. Find out what they're doing on the internet. Check out their social media apps, monitor them, find out what websites they're frequenting. And please learn the signs to identify human trafficking and grooming. And once you identify it, please intervene by reaching out to the Polk County Sheriff's Office and your local law enforcement agency, and if it's a child, DCF, Department of Children and Families. If you would like more information on how to identify the signs of grooming and human trafficking or how to intervene, please contact us at onemorechild.org. I just want to thank Sheriff Judd and the Polk County Sheriff deputies, the various agencies represented here today. As Dr. Marianne Thomas said, and we echo, it is of excellence, and how they are treating potential victims and those that are exploited is just bar none. They are now very, very advantageous about getting these services implemented immediately. So thank you all for your time, and thank you for your service.
Once again, our goal is to rescue these young ladies, and the Johns need to know we're going to have other operations, and we're going to lock you up. And there is a mandatory $5,000 fine that goes with a conviction. And we are going to go after people who go after these ladies who have been trafficked, these prostitutes, these victims, whatever status they claim in life, we're going to go after them. And the reason we're going to go after the Johns is because we know the vast majority of these ladies that aren't cooperating are in fact victims, and we're not going to give up on these ladies who we believe are victims either. Thank you everyone for being here with me today. As you know, we seek out the victims of human trafficking, and in order to do that, you do prostitution stings. Well, when you do these operations, as this one was hugely successful, we'll talk about Friday, you arrest Johns who are seeking out prostitutes as well. Well, let me introduce you to what I consider a high-profile arrest. This is Deputy Chief Jason DePrima of the Cartersville Police Department. As I understand it, after talking to his chief, he's been there almost 30 years. graduate of the FBI Academy, well-respected police officer in town. Did you notice I said in town? But he was out of town. That's right, he was at an American Polygraph Association meeting in Orlando, Florida. Let me say this clearly. I don't want you to miss it. Driving an unmarked vehicle that was normally assigned to the DEA task force, meaning their officer assigned to the task force would have driven this vehicle. But apparently his vehicle was not so good to make the trip, so he's in one of the undercover vehicles. When he shows up at our undercover operation in the government vehicle, carrying alcoholic beverages, apparently some Bud Light for himself and White Claw for our undercover operative. That's right, he bought a case of White Claw because she said she would like it. So ostensibly, this guy has come to have sex with a prostitute while driving the Cartersville Police Department undercover vehicle, and he was in possession of alcohol, which of course, had we not intervened, he was going to drink that, engage in sexual conduct, and ultimately get in his government vehicle and drive back to his hotel. But newsflash, this is Jason DePrima, 49 years of age, his picture at the Polk County Jail. That's right, and let me tell you the story as he relates it to us. He is texting with, guess what, our undercover detective. He started this conversation with her on Wednesday night where he was going to show up, but he became spooked. He didn't say why, but on Thursday night, he just couldn't resist the urge to be with our undercover detective, who he thought was a high-class prostitute. So he once again began to communicate. He asked how much the price is. She said $80, or a full half hour, $120. He said, I'm in. So he comes to the house. Ultimately, he's arrested. But the conversation is very interesting. He told her before the takedown occurred that the night before he had engaged with another prostitute online for $200. And that prostitute said, hey, go get a Cash App card. You know, you can buy them at the convenience stores. And he did for $200. And then she said, I want you to take a photograph of it so I know you've got the money. Well, duh. He took a photograph and sent it to the alleged prostitute on Wednesday night, according to him. You're not going to believe this. You can't even believe this. Now, this guy's a cop, and he was flim-flammed and conned by a prostitute. That's right. She took the information off of the card, got the $200, and left him high and dry. He was ripped off in a confidence scam with a prostitute, or who was alleged to be a prostitute. So that was on Wednesday. Then he talks, he's not giving up. Then he talks, and Thursday night at just before midnight, he shows up. He shows up with this White Claw, and it's like, what are you thinking? What are you thinking? What is going on? You're a deputy chief, a high-ranking official in a very respected police department, and you're showing up with White Claw and 2 Bud Lights, and we're not sure whether he can do math or not, okay? Because the deal is for $120 for a half hour, a full half hour. He shows up with $180. He shows up with $180 and says, I can send you the rest of it on a Cash App, but I had to stop to buy the White Claw. So for some reason, I don't know if he's planning on extra time, he can't add, he wants to leave a tip, he wants to impress this person. But listen to his text. He's real suspicious. I guess you would be after you got ripped off the night before. Listen to his text. If you're legit as you seem, we will have fun. If not, I'm riding around with a case of White Claw, feeling girly. Well, he got to feel arresty when we put him in jail. So we put him in jail late on Thursday night under a $500 bond. He didn't get out of jail until Saturday morning at 4 o'clock. So he got to spend, almost 2 complete nights in the county jail. So now he's gone from deputy police chief. As I understand, he's suspended pending their disciplinary actions, and he's facing criminal charges here in Polk County. So if all else fails, he can write a book, How to Ruin Your Career in 3 Easy Steps. Start out by going to Florida to a polygraph association school, then lie to the detectives when they investigate and ask you questions. Oh, he made admissions. But it's like, I wanted to ask him, since he's a polygrapher and was at polygraph school, would you like to take a polygraph with those answers you gave us? How would that work for you? And according to all the information we received, he's got a beautiful wife and a great family. And you just want to go, come on, man. Have you lost the last 3 brain cells? Or do you just have cabbage for brains? Why would you do that? Anyway, he's charged. He's managed, obviously, to create a great deal of angst with his family. His police chief is angry beyond words, which I certainly clearly understand. He's embarrassed the city. He's been a police officer there for a long time. And now he's facing criminal charges in Florida. Are there any questions? What he said was he came there to hang out and watch football. Well, that was a partial admission. He admitted sending the text that we received that's part of the evidence. But, you have to look at things to say, 1, is it legal? Is it moral? Is it ethical? And does it pass the smell test? He lost on all 4 points. It's neither legal, ethical, moral, or passes the smell test. And I think what he should have done was say, hey, if I'd have asked my chief or my wife, is it okay to go hang out with a girl over 20 miles away and watch football while I drink beer and she drinks White Claw? Is that okay? I think he would have gotten his answer. You would have thought, as a high-ranking police officer, well-respected, he would have known better. But he didn't. And now he's got lots of issues. Home issues, work issues, criminal issues. What he's got going here is a situation. And he's in the middle of it. Any other questions?
How disappointing is this overall?
Well, it disappoints me for the industry. We all know better. Now, you've heard me stand right here behind this podium before about some of our folks who periodically, we've got over 1,000 deputies. Occasionally one of them does something inappropriate. And when they do, we arrest them. My detectives, who are simply the very best, arrest them. And I stand up here and I'll walk all over them about their criminal conduct and other police agencies. But it embarrasses me for our industry anytime you see this, because the people have a right to and expect better of us. He embarrassed our entire industry with his arrest. But you know what? Here's one thing you can count on. Write this down in your little book. You come here, you violate the law, we're going to put you in jail. We don't care who you are because you become a criminal defendant and a criminal violator of the law, we're going to arrest you. That's just the way it is. But had he behaved, had he stayed at his Polygraph Association meeting, he'd been fine. But he worked all week. And so right now, think about it. He lost $200 to the prostitute that ripped him off in a flim-flam, in a scam that he should have known, but he should have known better on a lot of levels. Then he brought 200 more that we got, $400. Then he got misdemeanor charges. I mean, this is just insane. The whole thing is insane.
You guys have done multiple operations where you, via trying to get Johns for trying to get underage women to situations like this. Just your overall thoughts on, I don't know, where we are as a country as far as these becoming more recurring as the days go on, it seems like.
Well, it's interesting that the overwhelming majority of the people that we've arrested in this operation aren't for Polk County. The majority of the people in Polk County have figured it out. I mean, after all, you have to live under a rock if you haven't seen some of our operations. I don't keep it a secret. A word to the wise suffices. I don't want people to violate the law. I don't want people to commit morals crimes that creates and supports an industry of human traffickers. I don't want to create an environment where predators seek young girls. So my detectives, I'm telling you, are simply the very best. And in this operation, which I'll talk about on Friday, we were joined by a lot of professional police officers from other police agencies that helped us. Because we have a safe community. We have a community that looks out for the best interest of our children. We have a community that looks out for the victims of human trafficking. And we have identified some already because we have counselors that come to our human trafficking ops. But you know what? This guy's adding to the problem. And when you come here and add to the problem, you end up in a jail uniform like this. He knows better. He knew better. But you've got to not only hold the community to the standards of the law, you've got to behave and follow the law too, and he did. And he's got to pay the consequences for it. But the reality of it is let the word go forth. If you think you're going to attack children or create an environment for human trafficking, not in this county. Not now, not ever. Anything else? Okay, thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for being with me today. This is a remarkably exciting day for us. I'm going to start by telling you that we did a protracted investigation over the last 2 years. It ended up with the oral intercept or a wiretap, as we know. It's important to understand that when you do a wiretap investigation, that immediately that investigation is going to leave your jurisdiction. It always does, because we're dealing with an international smuggling ring that operated out of Winter Haven, Florida. There was a lot of predicate cases that was put together before the wiretap was ever requested. And it takes an entire team of people across the United States. So first I want to introduce to you those that are standing up with me, and then we'll talk about the other agencies that were involved, and you can get a flavor for the complexity of the coordination of this investigation. First and foremost, none of this can happen without our State Attorney Brian Haas, who's with us today. Mr. Haas and his wonderful prosecutors, Nicole Orr and Jennifer Ordonez, are in charge of this investigation. They have worked hand in glove with us for over 2 years. Our state attorney is the real deal in Polk County vernacular. He puts bad guys in jail. He prosecutes people. He does what's right. And we're proud to have him prosecuting for us in the 10th Judicial Circuit. Osceola Sheriff Marcos Lopez, a good friend of mine and my colleague, we helped us immensely during this investigation, and he's standing up with us today. FDLE Special Agent in Charge Mark Brutno from our Tampa office is here with us today. All of them will speak, as well as our police chief from Winter Haven, who worked closely with us because this organization was focused on and operated out of Winter Haven, David Brannon. But without Homeland Security investigations, we have Group Supervisor Darcy Corton and U.S. Border Patrol Agent in Charge Matthew Heckmanzik. We could not have been successful. We had to have contacts and we had to have work that occurred from the importation of methamphetamine by the pound, by the multiple pound from Mexico into Los Angeles and Fresno. And from LAX to Fresno, all of this drug flowed through Memphis and some directly to us through the Orlando airport. So we also had the U.S. Postal Inspection Service, the Orlando Police Department, the Tampa International Airport Police Department, the St. Lucie County Sheriff's Office, the Fresno Police Department, and the Shelby County Sheriff's Office in Tennessee assist us. Now, all of these predicates in front of a press conference, usually people go, but I want you to understand, without them, this couldn't have come together. It was that massive an operation. So we began in September of 2020. We received information that the Jefferson family from Winter Haven was smuggling large amounts of drugs into Florida, from Mexico through California, and then to the streets of Central Florida. In February of 22, we ultimately initiated the wiretap. And why did we do this? We bought and made predicate cases for the wiretap throughout the 2 ensuing years, but we couldn't get to the top and link the organization together. This was a very different kind of operation. If you look at our org chart there, you notice that there's kind of 3 distinct groups of people. They were all interacting, but they had heads of each organization, and we'll go over and introduce you to some of them in a few minutes. But it wasn't the traditional organization. It was multifaceted. So we started the investigation, and here's what we determined. We determined that this large amount of drugs, by and large, was being smuggled to us from LAX in domestic flights. And I want to focus on domestic flights for just a few minutes. As a result of this investigation, we arrested 85 suspects. We added 355 new felony charges, 93 new misdemeanor charges to them. But listen, folks, I am sick and tired of this national media and these national groups telling us that drugs are low level and nonviolent. I think we'll demonstrate to you in just a few minutes that it's anything other than low level and nonviolent. That's right. The overwhelming majority of these people, not everyone, but the overwhelming majority of them, had a previous 690 felony charges that had been filed against them, as well as 194 previous convictions and 712 misdemeanors. So we're not dealing with people that are low-level, nonviolent people. Where did all of that silliness come from? And it's important to understand, and I want the people of this country to understand, that get to watch this on social media from my lips to their ears that anybody that's trying to advance an agenda that drugs aren't dangerous, that drugs aren't deadly, they are lying to you. They are not telling you the truth. In this particular operation, we seized 268 pounds of methamphetamine, 6.8 ounces of fentanyl. Now that doesn't sound like a lot, just 6.8 ounces. But according to our DEA partners, 2 milligrams of fentanyl can be a deadly overdose. Okay, Grady, so what does all that mean? It means that 6.8 ounces of fentanyl could have killed up to 96,000 people. And we know in this investigation, and I'll repeat it again, that one of the Jefferson family, prior to the startup of this investigation, died from a drug overdose, but still their family poured this poison into our community, even though one of their loved ones died from some of the same drugs they were importing and selling on the streets. We seized a total of 49 firearms, all kinds of other assorted drugs and pills worth $12.8 million, and we seized $235,000 in cash. We know firsthand there were at least 2 drug overdoses during this investigation. And one of the drug overdoses, as I said, was one of the Kingpin's brothers that occurred just before we kicked the entire investigation off. It's important to understand why we were up on the wiretap, that we heard chatter within minutes of an unsolved homicide that's still being worked diligently by the Winter Haven Police Department at this time. So when you know that you have at least 2 overdose deaths, when you know that there is chatter on your wiretap as to a murder that just occurred in the city of Winter Haven, you're dealing with violent, dangerous people. So, I want to point out, when we talk about low-level nonviolent crimes, this is what people were having pointed in their face. I'm going to introduce you to a guy who was kicking the door in and doing home invasion robberies and telling people he was the police. But look at the high-powered firearms that we seized. Now you see this firearm and you go, yeah, that's a pretty ominous-looking firearm. Well, our folks, our detectives from the various agencies who are simply the very best in these long-term investigations had to face these guns, had to risk their life to get this gun away from hardened criminals and put them in jail. So at the end of the day, it's important to understand that people risk their lives in law enforcement in order for an investigation of this to come to a successful conclusion. But I want to highlight one event before I get to our folks. Listen to me, folks. There's nothing more important to us than the screening that occurs on our aircraft. When I hear people grumble and complain about having to go through scanners and TSA checking and their bags checked, and I hear that grumbling, I think, are you all out of your minds? They're keeping you safe. They're protecting your life. And I'm excited and thankful when I go through a TSA screening that those folks are there doing that for me. But here's what we know. Over and over and over on these domestic airlines from LAX, through suitcases, drugs was smuggled here. That's right, look at this. On one occasion, on one airline, 6 suitcases with this drug was smuggled into Orlando. They didn't so much as throw a pair of underwear in the suitcase to act like they were hiding the drugs. You think LAX has got a drug smuggling problem at the airport? I believe that they do, and they need to address it ASAP. There were 6 of these suitcases on one flight. Think about that. Let me show you what this group looked like. All of this came in on one flight. One flight. So what happened at the other end of the line? There needs to be a deep dive into the baggage handlers and to see where the hookup was to allow suitcase after suitcase after suitcase to get through the scanning with no clothes inside, no evidence of clothes inside, just drugs. You think we've got a big operation going on here? I think we've uncovered a problem for LAX. 94 pounds of meth and 48 pounds of cannabis came in that day on that one aircraft. And here are the masterminds. Here are the ringleaders from left to right. Abdosh McKenzie, DeMarcus Jefferson, Dwayne Stackhouse Sr., Leonard Henderson, Javaris Samuel, and DeMarte Munson. You'll hear more about them in a few minutes. But I want you to see the men who masterminded, who were the ringleaders, who put together this very complicated this very complicated criminal enterprise ring that we investigated, and see how dangerous these men are. And DeMarcus Jefferson lost his brother to the same drugs, the same poison he was peddling in our community. So let's look at some of the individual players. Here's Abdosh McKenzie. We'll go over real quick. He was selling fentanyl pills. He would tell us that in the undercover operations, I operate in mysterious ways so the cops can't catch me. Newsflash, it wasn't so mysterious. He got his first job in 9 years recently at KFC, Kentucky Fried Chicken. Do you know why? He was proud of that $200 he made that week. Now he's a major drug smuggler. Why did he do that? Well, he was jammed up in a custody dispute, and he had to show the judge that he had a legitimate job. Otherwise, where did the money come from? But he is a businessman, because then he would pay his co-workers with dope to prep his workstation at work. But he's an ethical KFC guy, because my guys ask him, can we have the recipe for the Kentucky Fried Chicken? He wouldn't give it up if he had it. But this guy was scamming the system the whole way. Then there's DeMarcus Jefferson. He's another local kingpin of the operation. His brother is the one at only 25 years of age died of a drug overdose. Ladies and gentlemen, let me underscore once again, I can't understand how in the world DeMarcus could peddle poison to people when his family suffered such a loss as their 25-year-old kid brother. But there are people dying every day across this country because of drug overdoses and drug abuse. And yet we continue to try to downplay it as nonviolent, low-level drugs. You'll hear me say that a lot. The next person that tells you that, ask them if they're out of their mind or if they're on drugs, because it's dangerous. Now, along the way, just before the investigation, here's DeMarcus Jefferson's vehicle as he was intoxicated and drove through the front of a store. Some of the local news stations covered this. But what did he have with him when he drove into the front of this store while impaired? He had drugs, because he made phone calls, and we have videos from the store of people running up with masks on, going into the trunk and taking items out of the trunk before law enforcement arrive. DeMarcus is also involved in violent crashes. Then there's Antonio Jefferson, another one of the family members. In April 2021, we and the Florida Department of Law Enforcement charged him with armed trafficking in methamphetamine. While, let me say this clearly, I don't want you to miss it. While out on bond, he was trafficking more methamphetamine. Did you hear what I told you? Let me say that again, so you want to hear it clearly. I don't want to stutter. In April, we arrested him with FDLE on armed trafficking of meth. He bonded out and was trafficking in meth. And then we heard him on The Intercept saying, "My attorney wants me to help. He wants me to cooperate. He wants me to give substantial assistance." He bragged, "How can I do that? I'm the head of my organization. How can I help?" Well, we're going to help Antonio Jefferson. We're going to help him to the state prison for a very long time. I hope his attorney got paid in advance. Then there's Nathaniel Carr. He was federally indicted for robbery from home invasions robberies, where he portrayed himself as a law enforcement officer, where he was kicking in doors throughout Central Florida. He's in custody. But we also have him for conspiracy to traffic in methamphetamine that occurred before he was arrested for his robbery arrest. He resided in Lakeland. He currently resides in federal lockup. Then there's Vicente Basanta. He's here from Venezuela with political asylum. Did you hear that? He is here with political asylum. Apparently, his ex-wife, who's not with him anymore and is not here, was a news reporter for the opposing party in Venezuela. So when the new party came in, she was scared, and guess what? He fled to the United States. Does he appreciate the United States? Oh no, he doesn't appreciate the United States. He comes here to traffic in drugs. And what you have here is a Bible case. You see? People recognize these as Bible cases. But what did Vicente do? He carried his drugs in these Bible cases. Now, how much more low down can you get? So we give political asylum to a guy from Venezuela to come to this country to traffic in drugs and hide it in Bible cases. What the heck? I'm certain there must be some other words for him beside what I've said, but they probably wouldn't be appropriate. Oh, he was trafficking in cocaine. He's still here legally on asylum. I say we send him back. This is Clay Bryan. Now, this is interesting. To tell you how this international operation goes, Clay pulls up at the racetrack gas station in Eagle Lake, and he leaves the car running. Did you hear what I said? He left the car running while he ran into the store. Was he only going to be gone a short time? Voila! 3 juveniles from the area steal his car. And all of a sudden, they're wrapped up in an international drug smuggling operation when they steal the guard of the stash house's vehicle, which had a pound of meth in it. But being the enterprising young men that they were, not knowing they were in with some really bad dudes, they found the meth. But did they decide, let's abandon our stolen car and our meth? No. Then they talked about, hey, I'm going to sell this meth and make some real money. That's right. So these little dudes not only ripped off a major international drug smuggling operation, then they were going to sell the dope to make a profit. Well, they all got arrested. But it's funny how there's twists and turns, because they did us a favor by stealing that car that day. All of that led us back to Clay Bryan, and we seized an additional 24 pounds of meth. And it all started because they stole the car that Clay was operating. Thank you, you little criminals. Raspers. Then there's Dormonte Munson. He's known as D-Money. He's a local rapper. He was a mastermind. He was one that really put together the trips from the LAX to Florida. But here's the neat thing about Dormonte. He would go through the community. He would provide fireworks on the holidays. He would have Christmas gift giveaways. He would provide Easter egg hunts. You see, he was the good guy in the community, made the money, shared it with the kids. You know, he was grooming himself as a community charitable contributor for the underprivileged. The whole time he's doing it with smuggled and trafficked drug money. He had an associate, Samuel Javaris. Samuel Javaris got a legitimate Georgia driver's license with a false name on it, and he booked the flights. He utilized the false name. It worked. He had a robbery warrant and a VOP for battery on a law enforcement that was 10 years old. We couldn't find him. He had taken on a new identity successfully. And he had a friend with him, Aldrea McPherson. You see, he's big time. He had a home in Fresno and a home in Davenport, and he moved the drugs. And when we went to stop them so that we could serve the search warrant, Aldrea called children who she had access to and told them, hide the dope. Little kids, hide the dope. Are you kidding me? So what did they do with their money? They bought gold, lots of gold. This won't even fit over my head like the last one, so I'll just hold it up. $36,000 worth of gold. So they're providing things for kids in the neighborhood. They're buying gold. They're telling their family and friends about how successful they are. And the whole time they're peddling poison to your kids. Okay, does the media have any questions of any of the team up here?
Years has this operation been in operation?
Yes, ma'am. We've known about some of these players, and as you can tell by the previous felony arrest, they've been arrested periodically. But the information came to us that the Jefferson family was heavily involved in major league methamphetamine smuggling, and we've been working this investigation about 2 years, a little more than 2 years. We're right at it. But information is, and we've known that they have been involved in smugglings and robberies and drug dealing for a number of years, but we didn't know of this operation until we collected our intelligence and worked with the other officers involved. But you must understand that my organized crime team, my detectives at work and special investigations and our supervisors, ladies and gentlemen, they're simply the very best in this business. And they're game on all the time, and they work with their colleagues across the state and nation, and that's why these cases come together. We still have 3 people out of state that are still at large and are on the lam that we're working with our colleagues. But when we can pick up the phone and the Fresno police are game on to help us, that's important. The Orlando police officers and the police department's game on. But I can't overemphasize, these folks have been in trouble before. You know, these folks didn't roll out of Sunday school and decide they would create a little mischief this week. These are hardcore people for the most part.
I'm a little hung up on the drugs in the suitcase thing. Were these drugs that were in checked bags, and is there evidence that TSA agents were in on it?
Well, this drug was in checked bags. And sometimes they would have what they call ghost tickets. They would get a ticket to travel, check their bag, and never get on the airplane. And the suitcase would fly by itself. Other times, in this particular case where we took the 6 suitcases off, there were people on the planes with the drugs, 6 of them. But they're very talented and they're very experienced. So this is not the first time these drugs have leaked through, which causes you to be suspicious of when they schedule the flights and who was on duty down checking the baggage in, because they would come off of the planes, through the security, down the elevators, and spread out. We watched a very, very, very impressive effort for them to be able to pick their drugs up and avoid detection. We did surveillance, and people would come from Orlando, and they would go to Lakeland and then down to Bartow and then back to Winter Haven before they'd end up back in Davenport. They would make a round-robin trip. So they were very calculated. But look, they weren't hiding this among clothes. They were sending it in this form. So at the end of the day, there was a hook someplace. There had to be. LAX needs to get on this.
What's amazing to me is that you're sending your kid back to college, or your cousin's coming from New York or whatever, and they're on the same plane as this.
Thousands upon thousands of people have flown domestically with drugs in the cargo hold underneath them.
Is there an indication that there's a distribution network going on in other cities just like this, considering that it was as complex as having airline flights and other things?
This particular operation was here, but we would have to be naive not to think that there's other major smuggling operations going on just like this across the country. This is kind of 3 smuggling operations all working together. Like I said, there wasn't just one boss of this. There were kind of like collateral duties across the different operations. But of course there is.
Can you tell us how many people were wiretapped and how that played into all this?
I can tell you, was it 9 telephones we listened to? 11 telephones we listened to over this operation. And understand, when you roll from phone to phone to phone, they drop phones and go to other phones, and then we have to go update the paperwork and get the state attorney's approval, and then ultimately the judge that's overseeing the case is approval before we can intercept the communications. But there was 11 different telephones in this operation.
How critical were these wiretaps to getting these criminals off the street?
The law clearly says that if there's any other method to successfully dismantle the organization, you can't use communications interceptions or a wiretap. So you have to exhaust other investigative methods before you go to a wiretap. So this organization could not have been dismantled absent this operation with this wiretap. And keep in mind, this investigation is still ongoing. You know, people watching this, you know, and I hope you're tuned in on your favorite social media. We're after you too. Don't sleep well tonight. Don't think you're going to just drink good wine and snort Coke. You know, we're after you.
Sheriff, have you been in touch with California law enforcement, and what's been their response to?
Oh, sure. Well, Fresno, we worked hand in glove in. We worked with our federal partners, but our California law enforcement partners are game on to help. They work very, very hard. It's just, it's difficult in a state like California, where they make misdemeanors out of possession of heroin and methamphetamine and cocaine. I'm trying to encourage everybody who wants to deal with or use drugs, all move to California. You know, if you just go out there, you know, we wouldn't put you in state prison anymore here until you start sending your drugs back here. Because California still hadn't got the message, but slowly but surely they are, as their crime rate goes up, their homelessness is out of control, the tax base is crazy, the good people are losing their mind in California. There's just not enough good people out there to lose their mind to make a difference. So at the end of the day, if you want to use drugs, go to California and stay there. Use it out there. It's a misdemeanor, and we won't bother you here in Florida, but we won't lock your butt up here. Anything else? Thank you very much. Y'all have a great weekend. See you the next time we bust up a bunch of criminals. Oh, and we're working on some of them right now. They don't need to sleep well tonight either. You just don't know which ones we're after, but you will know when we put handcuffs on you. Thank you. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for being with us today. As you know, we had a press conference last week, and we talked about Operation Fall Hall, where we arrested 160 who were involved in human trafficking. So you might say to yourself, why do they have that up here again today? Well, that was only part of the operation. The other part of the operation was Cyber Guardian 2 that went on at the very same time. But we didn't want to overshadow these very evil people with the volume of people we arrested last week. So the reality of it is, we arrested 173 people in our fall operation, not just 160. But that wouldn't have been possible except through the help of our police agencies that worked with us. In this particular part of the operation, we were joined by the Auburndale Police Department. We have Chief Andy Ray here today, and he will speak. We also were joined by the Bartow Police Department. Chief Brian Dorman's with us. The Davenport Police Department worked with us, Chief Bill Schrader. The Hernando Sheriff's Office, we have Detective Jack Evans with us. He did a remarkable job, and we appreciate him and Hernando for working with us. We also have our friend Mark Brooknell with us. He is the special agent in charge for FDLE. And quite frankly, when we work these operations, and these folks are outside of the county and don't travel, we have to get to them very quickly in order to effect an arrest and get their devices so that they can't destroy it, hide it. And FDLE certainly launches people all over the state of Florida in a matter of minutes whenever we need help. Plus, they were with us ever in lockstep in the operation. FDLE is our partner really every day at the Sheriff's Office as we do undercover operations and long-term investigations. We were also assisted by detectives from the Orange County Sheriff's Office and the Tampa Police Department. And that is very important because, ladies and gentlemen, no one agency can do these complex investigations very successfully without partnerships. Now listen, if you're watching me online today and you're from another part of the nation, and your police agencies, state, federal, local, county, if they're not working together to go after these type of evil people in your community, you can be sure of one thing. They are attracting a certain percentage of the children to sexually abuse. They are grooming children online. They are seeking out children to have sex, and a percentage of them are successfully finding those children. So as I talk to people across the state and across the nation, your police agencies need to do what we're doing here. When you look and you think about what does evil people really look like, what does a pedophile really look like, what does a child sex predator really look like, what does some of the most despicable people in the entire world really look like? Here's your photos. This is them. They were online. 8 traveled, 5 didn't. I'll give you details in a minute. But they were grooming and talking to children. You'll hear in a minute how they were sending not only pornography, but nude photographs of themselves to what they believed to be 12, 13, 14, 15-year-old children. You'll hear about those that traveled and the different jobs that they have. Some of this stuff you just can't believe. But I can tell you that research shows us if we don't keep these people locked up, if we don't keep tabs on them, they're going to offend again. You know what's really scary about this? When you think of this kind of criminal, most of these folks don't have an arrest record. This is not your traditional criminal. This is your evil person that lurks beneath the level of society looking for children. So they're not the kind of guy that robs and steals and burgles. They're the kind of criminal that attacks your children. And that's what they thought they were doing. Except our great detectives, who are simply the very best in this business, stopped them. Stopped them from getting to your children because we were undercover. So let's talk about the pictures of some of them. And I'll flip through them rather quickly. But there's Luis Velasquez. He's 30. He thought he was talking to a 15-year-old girl. He didn't travel, but his language was graphic. He sent nude photos, and he confessed. Oh, by the way, Chris Hansen, do you remember the old series To Catch a Predator? He's doing a new series, so he was with us embedded as well. Now, some of these people lawyered up to us, but every one of them talked to Chris Hansen. We appreciate that. Then there's Michael Hojewski. He's 28. He didn't travel. He just talked nasty to a 14-year-old girl, he thought. He was trying to groom her. He was very graphic. He confessed. Oh, when he's not doing that, he's an independent dock builder. Well, newsflash, Michael, I don't need any docks built in the jail. So you can just be unemployed. Nicholas Jenkins, 27, from Winter Garden. That's right. He traveled. He came from Winter Garden thinking he was approaching a 15-year-old girl. He talked dirty. He confessed to us. But at the end of the day, I want you to understand, you're going to hear about people that traveled great distances to get to what they thought was your little girl. Then there's Neri Banda. He didn't travel, but he talked to a 14-year-old male. He was very graphic. He sent porn pictures. He worked at the Amazon warehouse as an inventory selector, and he confessed. So if your Amazon orders don't get there quite as quick, we got one of the selectors locked up. Then there's Matthew Silva from Melbourne. That's right, he came from the other coast. I'm sorry, he didn't travel. He was talking about coming from the other coast. He talked to 2 different undercover people. Thought they were 14-year-old girls. He sent nude photos. He confessed. Oh, he's a bag boy for Publix, or he was. I bet but Publix doesn't keep him around anymore. But think about it. The dude that's carrying your groceries to the car is the same one that would like to groom your daughter online, or your son. Then there's Andrew Lewis. He came from Orlando. He traveled. He works at Lockheed Martin as an AV tech. And he came all the way here thinking he was going to be with a 14-year-old male. And then there's John Hunter. He's 52 years of age. He was from Davenport. He should know better. He's from Polk County. That's right. He traveled to the undercover location, and he announced to us that he is a mechanic for Budget Auto Parts, and that, I work on your cars. That's a scary thought to us. We're going to modify that somehow. He sent nude photos to this, what he thought was a child. And he was totally excited. And his communication showed that a 14-year-old girl had interest in a 52-year-old man. Newsflash, it wasn't a 14-year-old girl. It was a detective pretending to be 14. And John Hunter won't be working on any cars for a while. Then there was Joshua Cummings. He was from Davenport. These people must have just recently moved to Polk County, or either they normally live under a rock. So he traveled to the undercover location to meet a girl that was 14. He wanted to spank her. He was a subcontractor, by the way, for Whitting, Turner and Company. They build roller coasters, and he was currently building a roller coaster at Disney, but he was not a Disney employee. He's just a deviant. But think about this. These folks are traveling to homes, to parks, to shopping centers, and taking the risk of interacting with someone they don't even know on the outside chance that they've groomed the right person. And then there's Juan Guzman from Hollywood, Florida. He was one of our faithful travelers from the south end of the state. He thought he was going to meet a girl that was 14. He works in maintenance at Memorial West Hospital in Pembroke Pines. He's married. Did you hear me? He's married. So you say to yourself, Self, how did he hide that from his wife? Well, he had a secondary job that he was a painting contractor. So he told his wife that when he got off work at the hospital, he had to go do some painting. Well, we don't need any painting in the county jail, but we did paint him a nice picture in our bookend center online because he spoke very graphically, sent a nude photo of himself. Oh, by the way, we also have an ICE hold on him for the federal government. But the one who gets the prize for traveling the farthest is Matthew Bonjean. He's from Hemet, California. He's 46 years of age. Matthew traveled to our undercover operation thinking he was going to be with a 12-year-old girl. He works for Zaim Imaging. He's a field service tech, and he works on radiology equipment. And he was in Orlando for training. And he made the statement to us, it's got to be true. You can't make this stuff up. I thought this moved kind of fast, that we were able to wrap this deal up pretty quick. Man, it was just like a Chris Hansen deal. Surprise. It was a Chris Hansen kind of deal. And then when he saw Chris Hansen, he was a fanboy. He thought, oh my gosh, Chris Hansen. It's nice that he confessed. We appreciate him talking to Chris. Now, the way that deal works, when we embed the media, and you're all invited to come on these operations, as soon as our law enforcement investigation is over and our interviews are over and they're waiting for a ride, a free one-way ride to the county jail, you're free to talk to them if they want to talk to you. And this dude just talked Chris Hansen's ears off. Well, Matthew, I know you were starstruck. You're also jail-struck. Then there's John DeSeri. He's 39 from Venice, Florida. He traveled a long way because he thought he was going to be with a 14-year-old girl. Now get this, okay? I want to put you in the moment. You decide that you need a security system for your home or for your business, and you call Hotwire Security Alarm Company. They very well may send John to you. Yeah, that's right. That's right. That's what he does. He works for a Hotwire Security Alarm Company. Oh, he was also in possession of cocaine and heroin. He sent nude photographs of an adult male that he said was himself. He confessed to us, but he had some bravado. He said, I knew it was a sting. Well, you're a real dummy if you knew it was a sting and you showed up anyway. So the next time you have an alarm company that's working on your alarm or installing your alarm, know who they're sending to your house. How about them eyes? You like those eyes? Can you imagine the guy knocking on your front door and looking like that and going, I'm here to work on your alarm? He needs a stick in the eye, but he doesn't need to be working on your alarm system. This is crazy. But that's who these people are. They're not twins. They could be, but they're not. Same guy. Then there's Juan Diaz. Juan's 35. He traveled thinking he was going to interact with a 14-year-old child. Get this. Are you ready for this? This may be the most interesting conversation after the arrest. He's a service tech with LineWise Ltd. And there's a lot of people that say to themselves, who or what is LineWise Ltd? Well, among their jobs, they install internet safety firewall blocking systems at schools to protect children from sexual predators. That's what he does. So he's talking to his mom on the jail phone calls, okay? You can't make this stuff up. This is just crazy. He's talking to his mom and he says, Mom, they're going to fire me at work. And apparently she says, well, why would they do that? He says, I'm the one that's supposed to install the software so this stuff doesn't happen. Did you hear what I said? Did you hear that? I have done a lot of evaluation, and I think this guy's got cabbage for brains. And then there's Kevin Sanders from Winter Garden. He's 42. Every undercover operative that does these operations in Central Florida probably at some point in time has chatted with Kevin. He's a 16-year Disney employee. He currently works in IT as a service tech. He used to work in a program for a couple of the parks that were doing public relations for children. He did not travel, but when he confessed, he says, I have a chatting addiction. Well, Kevin, I have an addiction too. It's called an arresting addiction. You see, I like to arrest people who do things like you do. And my detectives were able to finally catch him. We've been trying to catch this guy for a long time, but he's good at dummying up his phone numbers and hiding his transmissions. But our detectives, who are the best, caught him. And he chatted with several of our people. He thought he was going to chat it up as he was a 13-year-old. Well, not only is Kevin a 16-year employee of Disney, not only does he have a chatting addiction, but he's married with 2 small children. I feel sorry for his wife and his 2 small children. But his wife needs to know she's married to a guy who's got a huge problem. Now he's got more than one huge problem. Now he's got a huge problem because there's serious criminal charges against him. But these are the people who are online trying to groom your children. And they go to areas where you would find children. They go to gaming sites. They go to social apps that attract young children. And they hang out. Kind of like back in the day, we used to think about the evil people that hung out in public parks. So why do they go there? Because that's where the children are. And they want to be around them. And they want to sexually abuse them. That's why we say clearly and unequivocally, parents, you're the first line of defense. Because online, these evil people can have a lot of charisma, a lot of personality, a lot of energy. They know how to talk kid, and that makes them even more dangerous than their photos appear. With that, first, we'll hear from Mark Brutnell, who is a special agent in charge for FDLE at Tampa office, and then the Auburndale Police Chief, Andy Ray, will speak after that.
Thank you, Sheriff. Thank you for having me the unenviable position of following you, but thank you. First and foremost, I want to say thank you to the investigators and the analysts who worked tirelessly behind the scenes, but also behind the computer screens to make this possible. These cases are very technical in nature. They require lots of training, a lot of dedication, a lot of patience. As the sheriff alluded to, the last individual, he was doing that a long time. It took a lot of patience to catch him. In 2021, the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children received 29 million tips for child sexual exploitation. Think about that, 29 million tips. As a law enforcement officer and as a father, that's concerning. That's also unacceptable. We've got to do a better job of talking to our kids and turning these folks in. So again, to echo the sheriff's comments, I implore you parents tonight to have those difficult conversations with your kids about the internet. The internet is a very, very bad place. It's also a good place, but have those conversations because you don't know who your kids are talking to on these apps in different chat forums. They could be talking to their friends, but they could be talking to one of these 13, and nothing good comes out of that. So again, I appreciate the partnerships. Central Florida has great partnerships when it comes to ICAT cases and working these types of things. And again, without the partnerships, this could not be possible. So thank you. Thank you, Sheriff.
I'd like to thank the sheriff for involving us as well again in this operation. The opportunity for us to work together with the sheriff's office and the other county police agencies and FDLE is very important. That relationship and the work that they do and that we do as part of that group is super important. Just to follow up on Special Agent in Charge Brutnell's comments, I was looking at the list from the other portion of this investigation, and there are 7 human trafficking victims on that list. There's a really good chance that several of those were groomed by people just like this, and then were drawn away from their families and put into the business against their will. There is a lot of trust put in people online, people that these kids don't have any idea who they're talking to. And again, just can't stress enough the importance of parents and grandparents, talking to children, young teens about the need to be careful, and also using parental controls to reduce the opportunities for people to get into their phones and into their homes to talk to their kids. Thanks also to the media today for your interest in this and for sharing this, because this is something that parents need to hear. Thank you.
Are there any questions?
In this operation and prior operations, when you seize their computers, do you find evidence that they were talking to actual children like this as well?
Sometimes, because that's what they do. Now, sometimes they try to erase it, but we find evidence that they've been online scouring for children as well. So yes. Anything else? Before I close out today, Andy Ray retired from the sheriff's office as a top boss after 25 years, and then went to the Auburndale Police Department as a chief of police. And he's about to retire after 10 years of service and a total of 35 years in the business. Andy's a dear friend of mine. He's been a great chief. He was a great deputy and sergeant, lieutenant, and captain for us. And certainly we're going to try to coach him into volunteering, working part-time, or whatever he wants to do. But I want you to know the people of Polk County and of Auburndale are safer because Andy Ray has served them for 35 years. He's made a big difference. He and his team have put bad guys in jail, arrested people who otherwise would have preyed on you, and he's always been a partner in every operation we did along with these other folks. So when I talk about nationwide, you need to ask your police chiefs and your sheriffs and your state police and your feds, what are y'all all doing together to attack these folks? Because they're out there and they're trying to get to your children. And it's people like our detectives and our analysts and our great men and women. We all partner together because you know what? Our goal is to keep you safe. And we do a pretty good job of that in Polk County. We can even do a better job if you see something or hear something and say something. God bless y'all. See you soon.